Now it's because we are spiritual agents as well as moral agents that we are capable not just of using neutral objects for good or evil purposes, but also of imbuing those neutral objects with spiritual significance. Let me explain what I mean by referring back to our trusty rock. Viewers of the Fuel Project series Know Your Enemy will remember that in ancient times people would take rock and build obelisks as monuments to the demonic gods Baal and Asherah. As we know, rock is morally neutral and not inherently evil. But because these obelisks were designed as an act of worship to Satan, they became a profane thing in the sight of God, and he despised them. In a similar way, we know that God's people in the Old Testament used morally neutral rock to build temples and altars, which were then consecrated to God to make them holy. So you see, one man could take a type of rock and make an obelisk to Baal with it, and another man could take the exact same type of rock and build a temple to God with it. In doing so, one has been imbued with profanity and the other with holiness. Because we are spiritual beings, we are capable of imbuing neutral things with spiritual significance. To use another example, in Know Your Enemy, we looked at how occultists create symbols and imbue them with hidden meanings and power. Again, shapes and lines are neutral things. There's nothing inherently evil about a triangle, circle, or a square. But when they are created with a diabolical intention, demons attach themselves to it to fulfill the symbol's purpose, and it is then imbued with evil. I call this the Jonathan Livingston Seagull effect in Know Your Enemy, and this is essentially what witchcraft is about. So for example, someone could create a god out of thin air, just out of their imagination, and call it Bearus, the bear god. They could build a wooden idol for it in the shape of a bear, and a demon will then assign itself to the position of Bearus to receive worship. In a sense, Bearus, although initially created from thin air and imagination, becomes spiritually real, but only in the sense that a demon has taken on the role. Indeed, behind every idol and every false god, there's a demon. Therefore God will despise that idol and everything associated with it because of what it has been imbued with and what it represents. What I'm trying to say in a convoluted way is that because we are spirit, we can affect the spiritual realm, and the spiritual realm can affect us. And what happens in the spirit eventually works itself out into the physical. For example, if you have things in your home like Buddhas, African tribal masks, dream catchers, Masonic aprons, obelisks, occult books, Ouija boards, rock music that glorifies Satan, or anything of that nature, although these things are made from basically neutral stuff like wood, fabric, or plastic, they have in fact been consecrated to demonic spirits. They have been imbued with diabolical spiritual significance. And because that's the case, not only are they a detestable thing in the sight of God, but those same demonic spirits are now most likely being given legal access to your home. Turn to Deuteronomy in the Bible and we'll see how God tells his people that they must be vigilant in keeping their camp clean of detestable objects. You must burn their idols in fire, and you must not covet the silver or gold that covers them. You must not take it, or it will become a trap to you, for it is detestable to the Lord your God. Do not bring any detestable objects into your home, for then you will be destroyed, just like them. You must utterly detest such things, for they are set apart for destruction. In ancient times, it was common for idols to be made of wood and then covered with a layer of beaten gold or silver. God says in the strongest language possible that even the silver and gold that covers the idols must be destroyed, because although silver and gold is essentially neutral stuff, the fact it has been consecrated or set apart for the worship of demonic gods has made it a thing set apart for destruction. You see, because Satan is set apart for destruction, everything consecrated to him is set apart for destruction along with him. And if we can go off on a slight tangent here, that's why there's hell. Hell was meant for Satan and his demons, not for humans. But if you follow him, if you consecrate yourself to him, you'll go where he goes and meet the same end that he meets. Jesus talks about the day of judgment when God will turn people away, saying, "Away with you, you cursed ones, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his demons." People often ask why God would prepare this place called hell for humans. He didn't. He prepared it for Satan and his demons. But if humans follow him, they'll end up where he ends up, as will everything else that was set apart for him. In Acts 19, when Paul preached the gospel to the people of Ephesus, many became believers and repented of their sinful practices. The first thing they did was to take all their items of sorcery and books of incantation and burn them in a public bonfire. The value of the objects in the bonfire was estimated to be the equivalent of millions of dollars in today's money, and no doubt they could have been sold. However, the value didn't matter. They needed to be destroyed. We should do likewise with anything in our homes that dishonors God. Don't sell them and pass the problem on to someone else. Just burn them or destroy them in some other way. I have personal experience of this principle. When I was a teenager, I was asked to move in with a non-Christian girl, and I was pretty set on the idea. My parents felt that my moral judgment was being clouded by some of the objects in my room, namely some of the rock CDs in my collection. While I was out one evening, my parents, completely independently of one another, both felt God suddenly telling them that they should pray and anoint my bedroom with oil. They both planned to do it separately, so were surprised when they bumped into one another in the hall, both with a bottle of oil in their hands and heading for my room. They didn't tell me they'd done it, but the very next day I had a sudden change of heart and I said no to the girl. Not long after that, I also began to be convicted of the music I'd been listening to and began throwing out a lot of my CDs. It was only much later that my parents told me the story of what had happened, but my thinking and behavior had changed almost instantly. A spiritual battle had been won. I eventually threw out my entire catalogue of secular rock CDs and could instantly feel an almost tangible lightness in the atmosphere. I only realized that there had been a heaviness after it had gone. My cousin also tells of a series of problems that he experienced in his home when he unwittingly brought back 2 Buddha bookends from Thailand. Things started going missing. There were nightmares, blackouts, things breaking, and even a 666 appearing on the wall of their living room, which couldn't be scrubbed off by any means, and which only disappeared when they invited a group from church to come and pray. The principle: keep your camp clean.